I'm ready.
Hello and welcome everyone out there. We welcome you in here at Sherwood Productions to what we are calling Rocket League AP Government Edition, and this is going to be our second episode entitled Federalism, and that is accordingly after the second unit of AP Government. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my co-host, Mr. Forever.
Mr. Plane, it is once again an honor to be here for the second ever AP Government Edition. As you said, talking all things federalism today. And as you'll see, we're playing a 3v3 game here. And that is definitely on purpose, as we have a special guest, Mr. mdettles, in the house tonight. mdettles, introduce yourself.
Mr. Forever, it is such a pleasure to be here, part of Sherwood Productions, and to gain a little bit of knowledge on being a citizen in this fine country.
And right off the bat here, because we know that political efficacy is kind of a big concept in relation to federalism, I'm just going to start off by asking some questions here to mdettles. Like, for example, did you vote in the recent 2016 election?
I did not vote in the recent election.
Okay.
Although I'm a registered voter in Illinois, and
Okay.
I did not get an absentee ballot. Although
Mr. Dettles,
perhaps I should have.
can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure, of course.
So a big concept is obviously efficacy. So did you not vote because you don't feel like you can influence the government?
I think that voting is partly a responsibility of every citizen, but then also a personal choice. And I think that we as citizens reserve the right to choose whether to vote or not. We're not necessarily obligated. It is not illegal not to vote. And part of my decision not to vote is in that in Illinois often the Democrat does win, and so I do feel like a little bit like I don't know if my vote can really change anything. That said, had I chosen to vote in Michigan, my vote might have counted a little bit more. I don't know what you
Very
guys think
true.
about that.
Considering
How-
Michigan was often a swing state. That's very
Right.
true.
I don't know how you guys feel about one vote perhaps being more significant in one state versus another. And in the core of federalism, is that a byproduct, something to be lauded, or something to really look at carefully?
Bring up a very good point there, and I also kind of want to talk about how maybe if you had done something or been involved at the grassroots level, you could have seen a bigger impact, as you would have really been personally involved in the movement. But moving on, I think why don't we start talking about this concept that comes up so often in the American government of marble cake federalism. Do you want to take it from there, Mr. Forever?
Mr. Plane, I would love to. I'm a man of food analogies myself, Mr. Plane, and I would love to explain marble cake federalism. So marble cake federalism is pretty much just like the overlap, sort of like the fluid shared powers between the federal, state, and local governments. And obviously, in recent history, we've had very terrible disasters happen in our country. And a great example of marble cake federalism are the relief efforts to help rebuild. So obviously you have the state and local governments getting involved because that is where it happened, and obviously they have a lot of jurisdiction there. But you also see the federal government getting involved quite a bit, providing resources, and just overall it's a huge collaboration.
I would have to agree with that. I mean, you got these federal organizations like FEMA and NOAA doing their best to either predict how the storm is going to affect the area, and then you got these police, EMS officers helping out, and then you got Governor Scott at the state level trying to figure everything out and figure out resources as best as possible for the state. And it just kind of demonstrates how all the levels really play a part in figuring out the relief effort, demonstrating that marble cake and federalism. And with that, why don't we turn it over to maybe a topic kind of that relates to the inverse of federalism, and that would be devolution. Mr. Forever, do you want to illustrate that for our audience?
Yeah, so I'll quick define devolution here, and that's pretty much, devolution is a concept where more power is given to the states, sort of like the shift away from federal government.
Yeah.
And I mean the counterpart to it. Would you like to touch on that maybe?
Sure, I mean, well, we see this balance between aggrandizement, which is the increase in federal power, and then this devolution, which kind of takes away or limits the power of the central government, probably a good way of putting it. And I mean, we saw, and a good example of this would be the Supreme Court case in the 90s, I think US v. Lopez, where South Carolina got some of its power back by involving a gun law in schools. So, I mean, this movement in the 90s just kind of showed a little bit of new federalism and a little bit of a shift away from power to the state government towards the national government.
Mr. Plane, I know we have 1 second
yeah.
left, but I just have a personal question for you.
Sure.
If you were to pick a favorite of the different types of grants given, what do you think that would be? What's J6 Airplane's favorite grants?
I think I would have to go with a block grant, since this would give me the power, per se, if I was a state, to choose really exactly what I wanted to spend the money on, instead of being restricted, like as if I were in a categorical grant, because otherwise I might only have to like spend the money on a specific thing versus a block grant, which kind of gives me a little bit more freedom to choose what my state really needs. And for Illinois, we know that's a lot of things, unfortunately, which is not good. Yeah, I'd have to say that, Mr. Forever.
Lovely answer.
And with that, we hope everyone enjoyed this talk of federalism, and we hope it got you a little bit closer to understanding the lifestyle that goes into being a citizen in America.
There's always room to be a good citizen.
Of course, of course. A little shout out to Mr. Review there. And with that, we thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a good night out there. Thank you.